Lesson number 11, add and subtract fractions. So earlier we did adding and subtracting fractions as parts of a whole. Now we're going to try to add and subtract fractions that have different denominators. So if your problem, let's look at our first problem. Hannah needs 1/3 yard of red fabric and 3/8 yard of orange fabric to sew a curtain. How much fabric does she need in all? Well, before you can add fractions, these are called unlike fractions. Their denominators are different. You get 3 for one denominator, you got 8 for another, so you can't add them together. So what you need to do is you need to get the same denominator for both numbers. And the way you do this is by finding what's called the least common multiple, LCM, least common multiple. Sometimes in fractions, it's also called the LCD, least common denominator, but they're the same thing. So this is how you find the least common multiple of two numbers. So take your two numbers, and what you do is you need to find the smallest number they both go into. What's the smallest number they both go into? So start counting up until they match. Ready? So these are the multiples of 3. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30, etc. Blah, 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 blah. So do the same thing with your other number. Now we're going to do all the multiples of 8. All right. These are all the numbers that 8 goes into. So 8 goes into 8. 8 goes into 16. 8 goes into 24. 8 goes into 32. And I'm just going to stop right there because I already see something. Ready? Do you see the smallest number they both share? Well, 3 goes into 24 and 8 goes into 24. So therefore, 24 is 3 and 8's least common multiple. This is the number they both share. It's the smallest number they both share. Now that I find the least common multiple, I'm going to set up equivalent fractions, all right, which we did in the last lesson. So we'll take our first number, and this is how I set it up. 1/3 times blank equals blank. This is how I set it up. And then I do 3/8 times blank. Sorry, that's an 8. It's an ugly 8, but it's an 8. Times blank equals blank. I set it up just like this. Now, remember, we just found the least common multiple. The least common multiple for 3 and 8 was 24. So ready? I'm going to put my 24 because remember, they have to have the same denominator. So my 24 is going to go over here. It's going to go in my denominator for the last number. So now I'm going to set up equivalent fractions. So remember, as long as you're multiplying the top and number by the same number, that's fine because it equals 1. So how many times does 3 go into 24? So you can either view it as multiplication or remember, multiplication and division are opposites. So 3 times what is 24? Or 24 divided by 3 is what? Either way, you're going to get 8. 3 times 8 is 24. So if I multiply the bottom by 8, I have to multiply the top by 8 also. So 1 times 8 gives me 8. So 1/3 is equivalent to 8/24. They're the same number. I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom. Ready? 8 times what is 24? Or 24 divided by 8 is what? The answer is 3. 8 times 3 is 24. If I multiply the bottom by 3, you have to multiply the top by 3. Whatever you multiply the bottom with, you multiply the top with. Whatever you multiply the top with, you multiply the bottom with. So I'm going to go straight across. 3 times 3 is 9. And there we go. Now I have two like fractions. Now I have fractions that share the same denominator. So 1/3 equals 8/24. 3/8 equals 9/24. Now I have similar denominators. Now I can add them together. So going back, I have 8 over 24. 8 over 24 plus 9 over 24. So remember, when you're adding fractions, the denominator doesn't change. If the denominator is equal, you don't change it. So 24 just goes right across. And I just add the two numerators together. 8 plus 9 gives me 17. There's my answer. So what's 1/3 plus 3 over 8? 17 over 24. And check it out. This is the answer right there. Let's look at another example. Here the problem says Joe has 3/4 dozen eggs. He uses 2/3 dozen eggs, two-thirds dozen to make omelets. How much of a dozen is left? All right, so we got the word left, which is telling me that it's a subtraction problem. All right, he used 2/3 to make omelets. How much of a dozen left? So this is a subtraction problem. Now, again, we have unlike fractions. The denominators are different. So before we can subtract them, we have to get those denominators the same. So first steps first, we have 4 and we have 3. I need to find the least common multiple for these two numbers, right? My denominator is 4, my denominator is 3. I need to make them the same denominator. So first things first, find the least common multiple. So here's my multiples of 4. 4, 8, 12, 16. Oh, sorry about that. 12, 16, 20, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Let's find the multiples of 3. 3, 6, 9, 12. I'm just going to go ahead and stop right there because it already happened. If I look here, 4 goes into 12 and 3 goes into 12. Boom. Those are my least common multiples. That's what my new denominator is going to be because they both share the same multiple. Therefore, they can both have the same denominator. Great. So, again, I set up my problem the exact same way every time. 3 over 4 times blank equals blank. And the same thing. 2 over 3 times blank equals blank. Excellent. All right, so I set it up every time. So remember, our least common multiple was 12. So 12 is going to be my new denominator. 12 is the new denominator because it's the least common multiple. So now I need to make equivalent fractions. All right, well, let's start with 3 over 4. So 4 times what equals 12, or 12 divided by 4 gives me 3. 4 times 3 is 12. Well, if I multiply the bottom by 3, you got to multiply the top by 3. Whatever you do to the top, you got to do to the bottom and vice versa. So now, what's 3 times 3? 9. Boom. 3 over 4 and 9 over 12 are equivalent fractions. They're the same thing. I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom now. 3 times what equals 12, or 12 divided by what gives me 3? The answer is 4. So if I multiply the bottom by 4, you got it. You have to multiply the top by 4. So now I go straight across. 2 times 4 is 8. Boom. Now I have two numbers that have the same denominator. I have two like fractions. Now I can subtract it. So 3 over 4 equals 9 over 12 minus 2 over 3, or what we found was 8 out of 12. So again, when you are adding or subtracting like fractions, when the denominator is the same, you do nothing to it. You just slide it over. All you're focusing on is the top part. So now I got 9 minus 8 gives me 1. And the answer is, oh, what do you know? 1/12 dozen